Okay, welcome. This talk is called Notes from Chrome. And it's called Notes from Chrome because there's a number of different announcements that we wanted to talk about, some that we have recently announced, some features that we have been working on, capabilities that we've been working on, as well as things that are coming out soon, and some things for discussion that we want feedback from you all. So it's an aggregate of a number of different topics. So the few topics that we'll be going through today in order are, one, about the recent Manifest v3 migration timelines, as well as some of the efforts that we have related to those timelines. We're going to talk a little bit about the Web Extensions Community Group, which has been mentioned a couple of times already today. And then we're going to go through some changes in the extensions platform, as well as the Chrome Web Store recently, as well as going into the future. And then we'll wrap up. So to start off, introductions. I'm David, Product Manager, Extensions at Chrome, at Google. And I wanted to talk about the recent announcements that we had made via blog on the Chrome developer blog regarding the Manifest v3 migration timeline. And in general, there's 4 big updates. In reality, it's really 3 updates and one little preview of something that we have coming up. And so really quickly to get started, the first set of changes are the updates to the timeline with respect to Chrome browser. And back in 2021, we had published a post about the Manifest v3 migration timeline that was very clear about what was going to happen in 2022. We had a lot of details about a lot of those changes, and it was a bit fuzzier going outwards into 2023. And now we know a little bit more about how the rollout of this Manifest v2 deprecation is going to take place, and we have additional details to share with everybody because we are committed to transparency, and we have a commitment to being transparent and keeping the community informed of how we're approaching these changes in the next year. And so a couple of the most important changes are with respect to the way that we are going to deprecate. Originally, when we announced a January 2023 date, it felt very much like a hard cutoff time. And we received a lot of apprehension. We felt a lot of apprehension from the community that everything was just going to suddenly stop working in January of 2023. And that's actually not going to be the case. So in actuality, we're taking an experimental approach to deprecation. So something is still happening in January of 2023, but it's not that all Manifest v2 extensions will stop working completely. And by an experimental approach, it means that we wanted to refine the experience for the end users of Chrome. So we wanted to try out a few different things, make sure that it's a smooth experience for them when this transition occurs. And the way that we're going to approach this is that starting in January 2023, the experiments will begin in Chrome 112 plus. So basically, starting in January, thereabouts, we'll start some experiments on a small percentage of Canary users. Likely, we'll test a few things out, have it stay a little bit, see how users react to it, iterate on it, and go from there. And so our commitment is, don't expect that in 112 and in January, everything will suddenly break. It won't, not even for all of Canary. We'll start off with low amounts of people, and we'll move from there. In June, those experiments will expand to stable channel. And so again, small number of users, try it out, iterate, see reaction, and go forward. And then notably, like enterprises that are deploying extensions to their workforce, who are deploying Chrome to their workforce, can opt out of these experiments and can actually opt out of the deprecation and get an extension on those deadlines until January 2024. We also looked at, given those changes to the browser, what would be appropriate changes in the Chrome Web Store itself? And what would make sense given that that functionality shift is happening in the browser? And here's like the same dates that correspond to the ones that you saw on the browser side. In January 2023, as we start experiments in Canary, Manifest v3 becomes a prerequisite for the featured badge, which is one of the badges that we'll talk about later. As Manifest v2 is not guaranteed to work for everybody in Canary. In June of 2023, we are imposing the requirement that all Manifest v2 extensions must be published as either unlisted or private visibility. People can still access it. If it's unlisted, people can still access it via a direct link, but it's not going to be, we're not going to treat it as, promote it as much. It's not going to be as visible in the Chrome Web Store as they might be today. And then finally, in January 2024, that's where it gets a little bit fuzzy, but around that time, when the enterprise policies expire, and enterprises are no longer able to run, nobody is able to run Manifest v2 extensions, then we will remove them from the Chrome Web Store. One additional thing that we had launched and announced alongside this blog post, and I saw some of the issues here referenced in an early talk, I believe from Brave, is a known issues page where we are detailing some of the issues that our community is running into when migrating to Manifest v3, new capabilities that are being requested, and these are the ones that are top priority. These are the ones that we're focusing on. We've noticed that previously there were disparate attempts. It was all tracked via disparate CR bugs, and we wanted a single place where people can look and reference. And finally, for documentation. So this is coming up soon, but we are revamping our Getting Started documentation for new developers. That's slightly less relevant for the folks here, but for new developers, basically the current tutorial is very much a lengthy tutorial about accomplishing a particular use case over basically several pages, several iterations of an extension, and we're going in a more modular direction. So more compact, modular tutorials. But the important part about this is that we're setting the groundwork for new tutorials in the future. So we'll be offering a way for developers to suggest new tutorials, like maybe with new APIs that you're curious about how we best can use these. You'll be able to suggest these, and that means that as we take in feedback, that opens up the possibility of advanced tutorials in the future. And so with that, those are some of the announcements we recently got through. As with all of the things that I've shared, it was a result of listening to feedback from developers, either here or in the broader community. It was a result from looking at issues in the Chromium Extensions Google group, discussions in the Web Extensions community group. So please continue to share with us feedback in those channels. Chat with us today. I wanted to quickly mention that there will also be a Q&A session that we will have tomorrow alongside Firefox. And so please come ask any questions at that time. And with that, I'll hand it off to Simeon to talk about the Web Extensions Community Group.
Hey, everybody. I'm Simeon Vincent. I'm a developer relations engineer on the Chrome team, focused on the Chrome extension platform and Chrome Web Store and everything Chrome and extensions. I wanted to take a few moments today to give you all a brief update and overview of the Web Extensions Community Group. I know a decent number of people here are familiar. I'm going to assume not everyone, though. So first up, the Web Extension Community Group was founded or formally launched in the middle of last year, about, 16 months ago? And this was an effort after ongoing conversations with other browser vendors to come together to explore how browser vendors and other interested parties can work together to advance a common browser extension platform. That's from the announcement itself. But that's really the core idea, is that we realized over the past 5 more years that browsers have been coalescing on a common extension format and approach to exposing extension capabilities to third-party developers. And ultimately, it's a bit challenging for developers to target a common platform that actually isn't common. It's just loosely related. In a lot of respects, this feels to me like the early days of the web, where everybody was independently going in the same direction. And we're trying now to get together and talk about what we do, how we do it, and figure out what a common browser platform, what a common specification might look like. So that's largely what this group is aimed at doing. The group was founded by the 4 companies behind these browsers, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, and Apple Safari. Each individual rep is a member of either the chairs for the group or the editors. So I'm co-chair with Timothy Hatcher from Apple. And by and large, I'd say we have a pretty democratic process. It is very much, everybody is interested in making as good of an experience as we can. We're not dictatorial, we're pretty open, very engaged in conversation. We don't do moderated queues very much. For the most part, it's an open conversation. The primary places where we do our work right now are on the Web Extensions Community Group GitHub page and on the bi-weekly, what's it called? I want to say GBC, video call, where we all get together and talk about developer concerns. The format for these meetings is pretty loose, but basically, over the course of the period between meetings, developers will open new issues and comment on existing issues. And as issues are added, we add them to the agenda to discuss in the next meeting. Then for the meeting, we will review the new issues that were created. We'll talk about open issues that have had some interesting or relevant updates. We'll follow up on issues we didn't have time to talk about last time. And generally open it up to the floor to give people an opportunity to talk about their concerns and make sure that we're aware of them. For the most part, this has been a pretty organic and dynamic situation that we've kind of settled in. But one of the issues with the way we currently run meetings is it has been invaluable for getting developer feedback and for making sure developers are heard. But we were explicitly created with a charter and a set of deliverables and objectives that we're trying to drive at that we haven't made a whole lot of progress on. So one of the main issues that we discussed at the most recent TPAC, TPAC, for those that aren't familiar, is an acronym that is, it might as well be meaningless. It's essentially the annual event that the W3C runs to have people that work on browsers and in the web ecosystem come together to talk to each other. So it's kind of a great opportunity to have a bunch of serendipitous conversations and drive work that spans multiple groups. In our TPAC session, one of the issues that we heavily focused on was how do we more effectively make progress on our goals, our explicit stated reason for existence, while also ensuring that developers still feel heard and we're able to make progress on some of those issues not expressly chartered, but are still important to the community and ecosystem. So to that end, that conversation, we had a couple of major items that we're planning on covering in the coming months, or trying to make some more progress on. We're tentatively talking about spinning up a separate meeting. So in addition to the existing biweekly meeting, we'll have a spec work-focused meeting that will serve basically as a project sync. So we can all get together and talk about what sections of the specification we're actually trying to work on, how much progress has been made, how we can best unblock each other. Basically the open version of your typical team meeting, which also means it's going to be slower. As part of that work, one of the things that we're going to be doing is trying to gather the IDL files, essentially the way that the individual browsers declare what APIs they expose. Try to gather those all in one location and review and compare them in order to begin to determine what kind of inconsistencies we have across APIs in terms of types that we accept or other potential incompatibilities like that. That then will kind of lead to some reconciliation discussion and opening additional issues and follow-up. But the important thing here is that we're trying to get more systematized in how we approach figuring out what the common platform is that we all implement and actually specify that behavior. And finally, the last item that we kind of discussed and resolved was that we're going to be targeting a set of manifest JSON tests. So a manifest JSON file, as I imagine most of you are aware, is the primary entry point to an extension, and browsers have a decent number of incompatibilities on how they parse and handle values in those fields, especially between MB2 and MB3. So our goal in creating this suite of files is that browsers will be able to parse them and have an expected set of errors that they'll produce for invalid types, and when we start to see incompatibilities, gather that up in some kind of report that we can share with relevant engineering teams and with the broader community to help everybody better understand what works and what doesn't. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Devlin Cronin. David Cronin.
Thanks, Simeon. Hey, folks. I'm Devlin. I work on extensions. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the changes that we've been making in the platform, and this is just going to be a small subset of what we've been doing over the course of the last year or so. So this isn't by any means meant to be exhaustive. It's not everything we've done. There's lots more. These are just some of the highlights. So diving in, I blatantly stole David's different format here are some key areas. We just, for some reason, love the number 4. It's the number of colors in the Google logo. It works out. So to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about service workers. Service workers, as we heard earlier, are one of the main kind of pain points that people have really been encountering when they've been transitioning to Manifest v3. And there's a lot of good reason for that. And we've been working at making them better to work with, more powerful, a better fit for the extensions platform. One of the main things that has been a real struggle has been the lifetime management for service workers. And we've realized that it's a real difficulty when you have some unpredictability, where you don't necessarily know when your service worker is going to be terminated, and when sometimes it can seem like you're still doing work, so why was it shut down? We've been working on how can we give developers more control over that and give them longer lifetimes when it makes sense, but then also while keeping that ephemeral nature of the service worker that is really kind of key to the vision of the platform that we have. So we're working at making that better. We've also been looking at how can we bring new functionality to service workers from the web that exists. Extensions are built on web technologies. They're designed to be the web plus more. They're web with superpowers. But that means that they should be able to use these things that are available on the web today, and they can't always use all of those. That's one of the things that we really want to change in extensions and then also potentially bring to web service workers. And there's some interesting work here where we've added module support in service workers. We've added support for fetching file schemes that didn't exist previously. We're looking at bringing WebUSB and WebHib to service workers. And there's going to be a lot more of that where we try to really make service workers a powerful platform for developers to use. At the same time, we know that the web doesn't solve everything, and there are going to be gaps here. And so we're looking at different ways that we can fill those gaps with that exist with service workers to help developers transition and to help Manifest v3 become this complete platform that can solve all the same things that you could do in Manifest v2. One of the ways that we're doing that, for instance, is with off-screen documents. One of the other areas that we've had a lot of different investment in is in scripting, where we added support for dynamic content scripts, which was something that was one of the key feature requests that's been out there for years. And we added this support in Manifest v3, where you can register and tweak content script registration at runtime. We're also giving you more control, the ability to inject into different JavaScript worlds and specify which ones those are, so you as developers can say, this is what I want to do, and target the specific context that you have, as well as injecting in other schemes that we didn't previously support. And then, as was called out in Anton's talk, we're also working on user script support, and we're hoping to have a little bit more information about how that's going to work coming soon. We've been looking at other APIs as well. We've been adding promise support across our APIs, now over 370 different method support promises. This is really kind of in line with bringing the extensions to the web as the web modernizes. Extensions previously kind of got stuck in the past in a little bit of the way, where the web moved forward and the extensions platform, because it was so distinct from the web, got left behind. And we really want to make sure that as the web gets better, we get to use all those same things that make the web great, that make the web powerful. And so we're working on promise support as one of those instances. We're introducing new APIs and new functionality. One of the main ones here has been in-memory storage, where we recognize that as a pain point. When you have an ephemeral context, how do you have some data that you don't want to write to disk, but you need to have readily accessible? And so we've added that in-memory storage API. And then we've also added support for new favicon handling that doesn't require extra CSP or exposure to other schemes. We're working on giving developers more control over how and when their extensions are embedded in websites to reduce fingerprinting, to give you more ability to say, this is how my extension should run. And again, this is just a small subset of the stuff that we've been working on. And then, of course, I want to call out that we've also been working with external contributors, like the folks at Igalia. And we've added a couple of different APIs in conjunction with them. One of them was for more targeted rule filters in declarative net request, where now you can have initiator and requester domains. And that was contributed by an engineer that I believe previously worked at eyeo and then worked at DuckDuckGo. And then we've been working with, like I say, Igalia on what you heard Felipe talking about earlier on disabling individual static rules. And this, to me, is really exciting because this is really us working in collaboration and us making the platform better as a group. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to do that. So that's a few of the brief updates we have. And with that, I will give it over to Zach to talk about the web store.
Thanks, Devlin.
Oh, and I forgot a slide. I'm so sorry.
There you go.
Never mind. And coming soon. Not done yet. There's one more thing. We also want to give you a preview of some of the things that we're also working on here. One of them is that we've been working on giving extensions access to the side panel UI surface in Chrome, where we know that this is something that extension developers have wanted for a really long time, and we've seen people developing their own versions of this. Chrome now has a native side panel where we're looking at how do we give extensions that access and that integration to make this kind of a first-party citizen of Chrome. And then we're also working on how do we give users more control. As we change the extensions platform and as we see this shifting landscape that we've heard a lot of talks here around privacy and security, how do we give users that transparency into their extensions, and what does that look like? And so those are some of the UI changes that are coming down the line as well. And now I'm actually going to hand it over to Zach.
Thanks. All right. So yeah, I'm Zach. I work on Chrome Web Store. I'm just going to give a highlight of a few features we've worked on or have been working on. So Chrome Web Store, at its core, really is about curation and like giving items or putting items in the hands of users. And as part of that, one of our main focuses has been on reducing complexity for end users, both extension users and developers. In particular, reducing information overload that can make it hard for developers to make quick and effective decisions within our store. And one of the first of these changes that we looked at was regarding privacy. So privacy is increasingly more central to our users. And unfortunately, though, privacy practices tend to be long, complex, and hard to parse through. To make this sort of better, we decided to standardize and distill the elements of a privacy practice into a short form that developers can fill out and that we display to users so that users are more easily able to figure out what data we collect, or sorry, what data extensions collect and how they use it. The next thing we looked at was our item listing pages, in particular the top of page metadata, which is the first thing that users typically see for an extension. For this, we took all of the information we had and put it into two simple badges, one focused on the extension and the other focused on the extension author. The featured badge, as we call it, just indicates if an extension adheres to best development practices, respects user privacy, and also has a clear and helpful store listing. The established publisher badge, on the other hand, indicates if the author has met two critical criteria, I'd say. The first is that we verified their identity, and we currently do that by verifying ownership of a domain or URL. And then the second is integrity. Has the developer followed our our policies and had a strong track record of doing so? If the developer meets both of those criteria, then we give all of their extensions the established publisher badge. The next thing we looked at was more on the developer side of things. How can we reduce complexity for developers? So over time, our developer program policies have become more and more complex in an effort to sort of protect our ecosystem and improve the quality bar for our extensions. And this, however, has come at a cost to developers because it's much, much more difficult for well-meaning developers to stay in compliance with our policies. And so to combat that, we created a set of principles that sort of simplify our policies and organize them. The first is be safe. So we want to make sure the store is safe for both end users and developers. So for instance, we may take down extensions which use data improperly or are otherwise risky. Be honest, so we have a responsibility to maintain user trust. So for instance, we may take down extensions which do not clearly indicate what their actual behavior is. And then lastly is be useful. So all extensions really are meant to help Chrome users navigate the web. And they should meet some minimum level of utility. This typically for us just means removing extensions which provide negative experiences, say like clickbait. And then lastly, I wanted to mention some features we're considering specifically on the developer side of things. So one common gripe that we hear a lot from developers is that there's no easy way to roll back a new extension version. Like say you publish a new extension version and you discover later while it's in review that there's some bug. And currently, there's no easy way to get around this because what you'll have to do is go in, resubmit your older extension version, and then hope that the review just doesn't take very long, which in most cases is not really the case. So what we're considering is we're exploring ways that we can allow developers to just straight revert back to a previous version that we trust without going through review, as well as canceling in progress reviews, for instance, if you notice a bug and need to just immediately cancel the review. We're also looking at ways we can decrease review times, in particular, fast tracking like low-risk changes that don't impact core item functionality, such as declarative net request rule updates, as well as other things. But anyway, we're always looking for feedback, so definitely let us know if any of the features I mentioned here or otherwise are important to you, or you can always just reach out to Simeon later on the extension forums. So with that, I'll give it back to Devlin to close us out.
Okay, we're already over time here, so I'll try and make this as brief as I can. I've been working on extensions for around a decade now, and that's really, really fascinating for me to be able to say that in an industry like ours, where I feel like most people kind of transition every couple of years. The thing that's almost more fascinating to me is that as I look around, I'm not alone. I see other people here who have been working on extensions for a decade or more. I'm not the one who's been working on them the longest. I'm not by any means this like weird person who just stuck around. There's something about this platform that really draws people in and really does keep their attention, keeps them interested, keeps them fascinated, and makes lives for users better. When I started working on extensions, they were viewed as this power user feature, this thing that, you know, a few of those folks, those like pseudo developer types, yeah, they're kind of odd, and they might go and install this thing that changes the way your browser works. That's not what extensions are anymore. I don't think that's what extensions were then either, but we definitely know that's not what they are now. Extensions are for everyone. With that shift, we've also had to make a lot of changes in the platform to account for some of that. And that's really, really hard. That's hard for us, but it's harder for the ecosystem. It's harder for developers. So I really just wanted to say thank you all for all of the really hard work that you've been doing. We know that this is challenging. We know that this is a struggle. And we think that this will make it to a better place. But that doesn't come for free. And so thank you so much for helping us keep this ecosystem alive and vibrant, for giving us the feedback in the Chromium Extensions Forum, in the Web Extensions community group. I'm really, really excited to see where this goes in the future, where we can take it. Extensions are so important to the browser. We know that they're loved by users. They're the way that you curate your own browsing experience, that you can make the browser yours. And a browser without extensions isn't the same. So thank you so much for being a part of that, for enabling us to give users a good browsing experience.